I longed for the nights when my mother would don an evening gown, punctuate every sentence of her lecture with the clicks and the clacks of her high heels as she strutted to the door and left a deep, red imprint of her lips on my forehead before she allowed herself to be whisked away by her suitor of the night. Those nights are rare when your single mother works 12-hour shifts at the local nursing facility and comes back home to a long evening of drinking, loud television, and heated arguments with her children. This night was better than all the others because the universe had aligned the plans of everyone in the household to coincide, leaving me behind for at least 5 hours worth of quiet, alone time, something I rarely got. I was in my bedroom, my secret stash of snacks scattered all over my bed, and the one shared laptop we had in the house all to myself. I didn't know what I wanted to do first. Watch a movie? Sing along to karaoke songs on YouTube? Have a one-woman dance party? I settled upon watching a scary movie and turned off all the lights to set the mood. I was barely past the 30-minute mark when I heard the distant sound of snickering. For a few seconds, I convinced myself that it was just a background noise in the movie I was watching, but my reassurance faltered when I paused the film and still heard it. I was frozen in place. I didn't know what to do. I just waited for something to happen, but nothing did. I slowly shifted my position. The bed frame creaked under my weight as I did so. I planted my feet on the ground and paused for a few minutes. It was most probably one of my siblings who had come home early and was playing a prank on me. It could have even been one of my neighbor's kids. Whoever it was, I was a 16-year-old girl who wasn't taking any chances. I finally had the mind to scan the room for anything I could use to defend myself. I shared a room with 6 and 8-year-old girls. The entire place was childproof, and my best bet was a heavy sports trophy, but I figured that it was better than nothing. The snickering got louder and nearer. It was turning into chuckles. I didn't know whether I wanted to wait in here until I was found, or do the finding myself. I took another long, hard look at the trophy in my hands, and decided to stay. With each minute that passed, the laughter increased in volume and enthusiasm. It sounded like a child who knew his parents were heading towards his hiding spot during a game of hide and seek, laughing with the voice of an adult. Then, I heard the sounds of chairs being dragged across the hardwood floor. It didn't sound like it was with much purpose, other than to clear them out of the way. A slippery, slobbery, wet noise followed suit. It sounded familiar, yet it wasn't one I had particularly heard before. Whoever was in my kitchen was slamming, ripping apart, and mushing whatever it was he had in his hands. I heard squishes and squelches, and I could only assume that it was some sick psychopath with a fetish for breaking into houses and mauling large animals. Whatever it was, he was laughing throughout. I was terrified. There was a stranger in my kitchen, laughing manically as he seemingly prepared himself a snack on the counter. There was an intruder in the downstairs of my house, the place where I had left my cell phone. I turned around and looked at my laptop, wondering if the police would respond to emails. I decided to give it a try anyway and tiptoed back to my bed. My trembling fingers struggled to type slowly and quietly, but I eventually managed to send an email and post for help on social media. An excruciating 7 minutes passed by until I heard someone pull up on the driveway. It didn't sound like the police. I heard the sound of heavy footsteps running up to the front door, frantically jamming a key into the keyhole and swinging the door open. The laughter stopped for a brief second before it turned into a roaring guffaw. A shriek and an ear-piercing scream penetrated the silence of the neighborhood, and whoever produced it turned around and ran towards the street, taking their screams with them. The manic laughter followed suit, and I finally dared to run to the bedroom window. I saw my sister running down the street while screaming, trying to attract as much attention as she could, and by the looks of it, she was succeeding. Running in the opposite direction was a naked man covered in a massive amount of blood that I'd only seen before on television. He was still roaring with laughter as he disappeared out of sight. I watched out of the window as a posse gathered just outside my house. My sister hadn't stopped screaming. I realized that she wasn't just trying to attract attention, but she was hysterical, and I did not want to go downstairs and greet whatever had brought my sister to such a state. The crowd grew larger as the flashing red and blue lights arrived, and footsteps stormed into my house. I heard curses and retches downstairs before someone finally called out. All I could manage to produce at first was a squeak. A female officer appeared in my doorway and asked me if I was all right. She told me to follow her with my eyes closed. Great advice for a rebellious teenager. I noticed her grasp become tighter as we reached the bottom of the stairs, and I couldn't help treating myself to a peek. Through squinted eyes, I saw the dismembered body parts of my mother neatly arranged beside her decapitated head on the kitchen counter. I passed out. 47 minutes. That was how long I had spent listening to my mother being torn into, ripped apart, mutilated, and eaten. The person responsible for that ran straight to his nursing facility, straight to his bedroom, and straight into bed. He laughed as they restrained him to his bed. He laughed as he was taken away in cuffs. He laughed as he was locked up in a cell. He laughed as he made eye contact with me in the courtroom as his sentence was being announced. I won't be surprised if he was still laughing when they strapped him to the chair. He will never laugh again, nor will my mother. By the time I'd finished middle school, my parents trusted me to be alone in the house, by myself for long periods of time. We're talking days at a time. They did this so someone could care for our elderly dog who needed attention and supervision 24/7. With this, my parents would sometimes go out of state on a small vacation for the weekend, leaving me in the house by myself. Back to the present, it was a chilly fall evening. My parents had left early Friday morning and wouldn't be back until Sunday night. Everything had gone smoothly, and I was having a good time finally getting the house to myself. Until Saturday. When my parents left, I brought my gaming console out into the living room, along with some pillows and a blanket, figuring my dog slept in the living room. I'd sleep out there with her in case she needed me in the middle of the night. It was getting to be around dinner time. After I fed my dog, I texted my mom, asking for a bit of money to order a pizza because I didn't feel like cooking that night. I ordered the pizza and sat on the couch playing a shooting game until the time had passed and I heard the doorbell ring. I got up and quickly threw on my jacket and went to look through the peephole. There stood the pizza guy, a medium-height, middle-aged looking guy. He had dirty blonde hair and eye bags, seeming like he hadn't slept in a year. I could smell the dirty stench of cigarettes through my door. He had his eyes fixed on the camera doorbell, with a worried look on his face. I unlocked the door and opened it, the equivalent to my body width, and greeted him with a smile. His eyes darted over to me. A small, creepy grin grew on his face. "Oh, I wasn't expecting a young girl like you," he said. Gross, I thought. Confused about how to answer, I replied with a quiet giggle. I held out my hands to take my food. "So, how old are you?" the man asked, still grinning. "Sorry, man, I don't answer questions like that," I said, even more creeped out than before. He huffed, seeming to get frustrated. I placed the pizza boxes down on the couch next to me and reached into my pocket to hand him the tip I had planned to give him. "Are your parents home?" he asked. Lying, I replied, "Yeah, they're in the other room." I hoped he would believe me and just go, seeing as my parents took my mom's car on vacation, leaving my dad's car in the driveway. He scoffed and said, "You know, I like that game too. Do you like shooters?" Referring to my paused game screen on the TV behind me. I became increasingly annoyed, but I didn't want to be rude and just slammed the door in his face. "Yeah, sure. Look, I'm sorry, but I have to go now," I said, trying everything I could to get this man to leave me the hell alone. The man scowled. He took the tip, crumpled it in his hand, and started muttering profanities under his breath. But I only could make out one phrase before I shut the door. "You're going to regret this." I locked the door and anxiously watched carefully from the window to make sure he got back in his car. I didn't stop watching until he sped off around the corner. I let out a sigh of relief and did a quick sweep around the house and made sure all the windows and doors were locked. A couple of hours had passed until I decided I was going to lay down and watch TV for the night until I fell asleep. I made sure my dog was tended to and laid down. Before I noticed, I had drifted off, completely forgetting the interaction I had earlier in the day. When I woke up, it was still dark outside, 2 in the morning-ish. My dog was barking like crazy, and not an "I want to go outside" bark. An alarmed, "I see a stranger" kind of bark. If you have a dog, you understand this, and you know what they're indicating to you. I propped myself up on my elbows and stretched for a second, looked around for a bit, and didn't see anything. I was about to lay back down until I noticed it in the corner of my eye, a face. In the window to my right, I saw the same man from earlier, grinning again. He waved at me, still smiling but looking more sinister by the second. I felt my blood run cold. Why is he here? How long had he been watching me sleep? I shot up, and my fight or flight triggered instantly. I ran to my room, pulled the baseball bat out from underneath my bed, and walked back to the living room where I had been sleeping, clutching it in hand. When I went back, the man had moved from the window to the front door, knocking gently. "Let's hang out and have some fun," I heard him say from outside. "I'm going to call the police if you don't get the hell away from my house," I yelled back. He banged on the door, violently aggressive this time. "The hell you will, you little brat," he screamed. The doorknob shook violently. My dog was going mad at this point, so I took her with me, locked myself in my room, and dialed 911 on my phone. I was explaining what was happening when I heard a couple of loud bangs. He was throwing himself at my front door to try to bust through it. I had texted my parents, and they had already packed and started driving back. But all of that left my mind when I heard the front door burst open and fall onto the ground of my living room. I whispered into my phone to the 911 operator that the man had broken into my house, and the person on the other end of the line instructed me to stay quiet and sit tight, as the police were minutes away before I could think of anything. My phone died, and I started panicking. I quietly went over, shut my bedroom lights off, and hid in my closet with my dog, petting her as to make sure she wouldn't bark and reveal our hiding spot. I heard the man walking through my house, searching under tables, behind couches, and in hallway closets. He stopped walking for a moment. I could hear him directly outside my bedroom door. He shook the handle and huffed that same way before, indicating he was becoming frustrated. There were a couple of bangs on the door before he was able to punch a hole through my door but enough to fit his hand through to unlock it. I heard the lock. It gave a small click sound before the door creaked open. It was pitch black in my room. The man took a step in and stood there. Seconds felt like hours. I cupped my hand over my mouth to quiet my anxious breathing. I heard him rummaging through my belongings. He looked under the bed, under my desk, then the last to hide. He had his hand on the closet door. I'm dead, I thought. I didn't know who he was or what he wanted, but I knew it wasn't going to be good. Before he had the chance to open the closet, my prayers were answered, and I heard the sirens of police getting closer and closer. Damn it, the man whispered. He exited my bedroom and ran through my home. I heard the back door slide open and the crunching footsteps through the dead grass. The 911 operator must have told the police where I was, and I felt like I could finally breathe again when an officer opened the closet door and told me it was okay to come out. They led me outside with my dog on a leash, and I sat on the edge of the set in the police car. I waited there as the police searched my house in case the man had still been there. The police said there were no signs anything was stolen. He wasn't there for valuables. He was looking for me. That fact will disturb me till the day I die. There were many signs that it had been a break-in, so the case stayed open for a while, but eventually closed. The guy was never found, and it wasn't known where he was. His identity was found, and this man had past warrants for home invasions and failure to appear in court. The fact that he was never caught and is still out there somewhere shakes me to my core. But I know for sure I'm never opening the door for anybody ever again when I'm home alone. This happened back last November. My brother Tommy were home alone because our mom was working. When me and Tommy were left home alone, we did what any other kids would do: stay up late, eat loads of sweets, and do stupid stuff. It was around 1:30 in the morning, and I was downstairs watching TV. I heard banging upstairs, as if someone was jumping or fallen off a bed. Tommy came running downstairs, so I asked him what was wrong and to be quiet because the neighbors are pricks and would complain about us being loud. Tommy said that he heard someone calling his name from the garden. I told him he's just being stupid, and if someone was calling him, I would have heard it as well as the garden doors in the living room. He got angry because I wasn't listening, and we kept bickering. Tommy decided to stay downstairs with me, which I was fine with. At this time, it was around 2:45 a.m., and someone knocked on the door. At first, I got a bit scared, but ignored it. Whoever or whatever it was kept knocking. I assumed it was the neighbors knocking, as the TV was quite loud. I went to answer the door, but no one was there. Weird. I locked the door and started walking back to the living room. I turned back round to turn the hallway light off. The door handle started moving. Someone was trying to open the door. If your neighbors came to your house to complain about the noise, I don't think they would try opening the door to get inside your home. I felt sick. I thought nothing of it, though. After that happened, I went back to the sofa. Tommy had fallen asleep, so I decided to go to sleep as well. I woke up to Tommy, shouting, "What the hell, Ruby, wake up," were his exact words. There is a window in our living room that reflects into our garden. When I woke up from Tommy, shouting he was pointing at the window, I looked at it. Someone was right outside, staring into the window. Like I said, the window faces our garden. Someone had jumped over the fence into our garden and was watching me and my brother sleep. The person looked like a man. He had pale, yellowish skin and bloodshot red eyes. His pupils looked dilated as if he just had 8 lines of cocaine. He had dirt all over his face, and he looked sick. Some of his teeth were missing, or they were black, I couldn't tell, but it was disgusting. We called the police, but they didn't do much. They came 2 hours after it happened, so obviously it didn't help. Whatever or whoever it was, I hope to never see him again. Why was he watching us? And how did he know my brother's name? I don't know. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to show your support by giving it a thumbs up. Your likes and comments help me continue creating content you'll love. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel so you won't miss out on more exciting content.